You know what I hate about this life? It's when it feels so shallow and meaningless. It's like I'm flooded with all these things that have no depth. Sigma, what does that mean? Nothing. That can just all encompass my life. Or maybe it's because my responsibilities have grown so much heavier and so repetitive. I have to unload the dishwasher again. I'm going to wash and hang the same clothes that I hung a week ago. When I was a kid, it seemed like things were more wonderful than they are now. Or maybe it's all in my brain. I used to be able to engage with life, but now sometimes I'm so dull. I think this is what people call brain rot. And it may sound really simple, but there's one daily practice that has woken my brain up over and over, and my kids too, and no one ever talks about it. But first, let's go back to the ugly year of 2020. April of that year was so hard for the whole world. The places that usually would wake us up and give spark to life, where we got to hang out with people, they were gone. We didn't even go to church. We canceled our co-op. We were really in this mundane world. And I remember driving in the van, and there was like a black fog over my life where things didn't seem as vibrant as they used to, when the repetition of life started to feel just meaningless. What's even the point? And that time I had been on my phone so much. I think a lot of people did this, but I would look multiple times a day to see, has the virus hit my community? How many people have died? How many people are in the hospital from this? And all the news, all the other news sources, not just stats, but all the stories, they were rotting my brain. But I had been reading The Secret Garden with the kids. And in The Secret Garden, there's a girl named Mary who's been orphaned, and she moves to a house with Colin, and they start to revive this garden that has been locked up. And then springtime comes, and Colin's dad shows up into this locked garden, and everything has come alive. So I'm driving through Knoxville with this dark brain fog, and those words come to my mind. The place was a wilderness of autumn gold and purple and violet blue and flaming scarlet. And on every side were sheaves of late lilies standing together, lilies which were white or white and ruby. He remembered well, when the first of them had been planted, that just at this season of the year their late glories should reveal themselves. Late roses climbed and hung and clustered, and the sunshine deepening the hue of the yellowing trees made one feel that one stood in an embowered temple of gold. And the fog blew away. I saw that there were irises that were this deep purple. And I saw tulips that were yellow, but tie-dyed red. And the cherry trees at the park were blooming, and the blossoms were floating along in the air. And I could smell honeysuckle that smelled like someone put on too much perfume that morning. And my chest just was buoyant again. Now you may say to me, look, my brain is rotted. There is no way I could read a classic book aloud to my kids. Now I will get to that. I have the perfect baby step for you at the end. But first, let's talk about a bigger problem, because not being able to see the beauty of the world isn't actually the worst part of life. It's that we've lost the significance of these mundane things. What is the point of our task? Why do I have to do this again? I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. I want to address that head on. But first, let me tell you about one of my wake-up calls. So I was sitting in my living room reading to my kids, and I'm sitting on the floor in front of the couch because this book has such interesting pictures. I've got a girl on this side, a girl on this side, a girl right here. And I'm reading this great book Dangerous Journey. It is an abridged version of Pilgrim's Progress. The scene I was reading, Christian, the main character, and Hopeful have been locked up by the giant Despair. So my mind is wandering. It is unreal, but I can read anything now and not even think about what I'm reading. It's a terrible curse. But my mind is wandering, and until I get to the specific line, I'll tell you right when it happens. Next night, the giant was again talking to his wife in bed. What? Are they still alive? She asked. They've got nothing left to live for. So when you get up in the morning, you must tell them to make an end of themselves. Up he got and went to them in a surly manner as before. And perceiving them to be very sore from the bruises he had given them on the previous day, he counseled them as his wife advised. Your only way out of this place, he said, is by death. So why are you waiting? Make an end of yourselves. Why should you choose life, seeing it is attended by so much bitterness? Here it is. He had thoughtfully provided them with a noose, a knife, and a bottle of poison so they could have a choice. And when I read that line, maybe the physicalness of it, I just all of a sudden realized that this is a danger that my children will face. And so I'm reading with my daughter. I'm starting to hold her even closer because they will have to face this giant of despair. When they respectfully declined, he looked upon them in a very ugly manner. He would have killed them there and then himself, but that he fell into one of his fits. For the giant had a secret weakness. On dark and cloudy days, he was strong as an ox, but in sunshiny weather, he fell into fits. Life got more meaningful that day. This fantasy classic showed me that what I call boring is actually a dark fight. But I got to show you how he got out of it. Then, as often happens in dreams, when things are desperate, Christian suddenly remembered. I have in my pocket, he said, an old key called Promise. It might just fit the lock. Try it, said Hopeful, hopefully. Those books are good and they're life-changing, but they are nothing without the most underrated classic of all time. I stumbled upon some instant messages that I had sent to my husband when I was 21 years old. We had been married 2 years, and I was so ashamed when I read these texts. They were all about what was central in our lives: Lost, American Idol, and The Office. And they were so shallow. And that time in our lives was rough. Our marriage was not good. We were hunting for a church, and we went to the Bridge, where the first Sunday, Josh Howerton preached a sermon on sexuality in marriage. And he said, marital sex is about the glory of Jesus Christ. And I was floored. So where did he get that? Well, he got it from Ephesians 5. It says, starts by quoting the Old Testament. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. He said, when you're naked, unashamed, and deeply loved, even in your imperfections, this is a picture of how Christ loves the church. Okay, my life was totally changed. Not just because he taught about marital sexuality, because he showed me that the gospel is not just when I repented of my sins and trusted in Christ in the beginning. The gospel is the glory of life all the way through. So you can better believe that we joined that church, and it was incredible. Totally changed our life, totally changed our marriage, because they taught the Bible in a way that was faithful that we had never heard before. And so we're so passionate about this. that we created a webinar for you to learn how to effectively read the Bible with your kids. And so there's a link below for that webinar. But you may say to me, all these classics, they're old. And I don't have a lot of time with my kids. I've got to be reading stuff about the issues they're going to face tomorrow. Have you seen what this world's like? It's unbelievable the things that my kids have to navigate. Oh, I totally feel that. Last summer, I got this email from Axis, and this was the title: Kicking Off the Sex Talk, 6 Conversations You Need to Have with Your Teen. And so I'm like, leaning forward on the edge of my seat, heart beating a little faster. And one of the conversations they said I need to have with my teen is about consent. And then they started talking about tea. And like my temples are like getting tight. My heart's racing a little bit, getting uncomfortable. No way. I am not talking to my 13-year-old about consent. But they were very convincing, but no, okay? Then we start reading the Odyssey. Odysseus is trapped on a beautiful island by the goddess Calypso, and she's told she has to let him go. Acknowledging the edict sent from Zeus, the goddess went to find Odysseus. She found him on the shore. His eyes were always tearful. He wept sweet life away in longing to go back home, since she no longer pleased him. He had no choice. He spent his nights with her inside her hollow cave, not wanting her, though she still wanted him. By day, he sat out on the rocky beach, in tears and grief, staring in heartbreak at the fruitless sea. So I'm like, boom! We're talking about consent. And I love this, that you can see Esther's writing here. Really, like he had no choice, really. But it was a great conversation. And last week, we were talking about the Odyssey again and what we remember most clearly about it. Guess what came up? Consent. Timeless issues come up when you read the classics. I do a podcast with my daughter and our friend who's 15, and we're reading Till We Have Faces. And we read this quote: "Oh, lady, it's 1,000 pities they didn't make you a man." He spoke it as kindly and heartily as could be, as if a man dashed a gallon of cold water in your broth and never doubted you'd like it all the better. So inside, I'm like rubbing my hands together, sitting on the edge of my seat, waiting for this to come up. And I ask, so what does he think a woman is? You can listen to that podcast. We'll put a link below. But classics, they get it. They know what issues are classic. They're still relevant. That's why they're still around. But you say to me, you want me to read Homer Until We Have Faces? Look, my brain is fried. I read and I can't even understand what I'm reading. Okay, I have totally been there. I didn't read any classic books until I was an adult. And I still remember wanting to read Jane Austen. And I read the first page. I didn't understand a word of that. I read it again. I don't know what's going on. Now, what really helps is reading aloud and having the habit that is reforming your brain. But I've got you covered. There's so many awesome children's classics to start with. The one I would recommend the most is Little Women. It's such a great book. And Louise May Alcott started out working for newspapers. So every chapter has its own little story, but it also is broad, a big story through the whole way through. But let's jump into one of my absolute favorite scenes. Up to this point, the father of the March family has been gone, and he comes home on Christmas Day. And I've made several discoveries today. "Oh, tell us what they are," cried Meg, who sat beside him. "Here's one." And taking up the hand which lay on the arm of his chair, he pointed to the roughened forefinger, a burn on the back, and 2 or 3 little hard spots on the palm. "I remember a time when this hand was white and smooth, and your first care was to keep it so. It was very pretty then, but to me it is much prettier now. For in these seeming blemishes, I read a little history. A burnt offering has been made of vanity. Meg, my dear, I value the womanly skill which keeps home happy more than white hands or fashionable accomplishments. I'm proud to shake this good, industrious little hand. If Meg had wanted a reward for hours of patient labor, she received it in the hearty pressure of her father's hand and the approving smile he gave her. That's what we're aiming for. We've got to fight against brain rot because one day we want our Father to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant."